Welcome to Executive Leaders Radio, your spot in the corner office, the radio show where executives share their secrets to success. Executive Leaders Radio.
You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio, broadcast from the law offices of Pretori Law in Tysons, Virginia. This is your host, Herb Cohen, with my co-hosts, Joe Applebaum, Potomac Companies, Brian Chandler, Pretori Law, Mark Haas, Association for Enterprise Growth, Bob Sprague, Yes and Shirley Mowry, Hertzbach & Company. We have a great lineup of guests for you on our show today. Mr. Mark Haas, please give us the rundown.
Yes, today we have Martin Mayorga, President of Mayorga Organics, Jeff Shen, President of Red Team Consulting, John Fraser, President of ASM Research, and Tom Stauber and Mike Chavira, Managing Partners and Co-Founders of Axiologic Solutions.
Let's get to know our first guest, Martin Mayorga, President, Mayorga Organics. Martin, what is Mayorga Organics? What are you guys doing?
We're primarily a specialty coffee company that focuses on giving farmers opportunities through other specialty products.
Give me that again. What do you mean?
Well, we started as coffee importers and roasters over 20 years ago, and then we learned that we can provide quality products to consumers in the U.S. while helping farmers with other products like chia, cacao, honey, other diversified products.
From Latin America?
Specifically from Latin America, with the purpose of supporting small farmers and communities.
How large or how small is this team?
We have about 60 people on staff right now.
And how'd you get a job with this company?
I started it when I was young, in my late teens, early 20s.
And where are you from originally?
I was born in Guatemala.
Go ahead.
And we left Guatemala after a major earthquake. We moved to Nicaragua from there.
And then?
There was a revolution. We left there, went to Costa Rica, had a good time, and were asked to leave after a year.
Why?
Because all the Nicaraguans went to Costa Rica and they were overcrowded.
And then where'd you go?
Went to Peru, and there were some issues there with something called the Shining Path and a lot of terrorism.
And then where'd you go? Came
to the U.S. As refugees of the Nicaraguan Revolution. Were in Miami for about a year and a half, and then came up to the D.C. area.
Well, you moved around a lot between the ages of 8 and 12, a bunch of different countries. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have 2 older brothers, 1 older sister. I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest of 4. And when you arrived in the U.S. after that experience, moving to those different countries, 8 to 12, well, how did you feel?
It was nice. Everything was safe and clean, and it was a duality. It was the kind of remembering what I had seen in the poverty and the struggle that I had seen in Latin America, but then also the excitement for the opportunities that a country like the U.S. that provides opportunities.
What do you mean the excitement for the opportunities? You actually remember that when you were 12?
I remember clean roads and safe cities and being able to, not worry about, gunshots at night and things like that.
How young were you when you started making money?
I was about 12 as soon as I came to the U.S., and I learned that you could do things like mow lawns and shovel driveways and things like that.
Robert?
So with a background like that, it would be understandable if you wanted to sort of kick back and enjoy this sort of winning the lottery of landing in Miami compared to where you'd been before. What made you want to take on the risk of starting a business?
I think it was 2 things. Number one, in a self-focused way, I saw opportunity. I got to see kids that had things that I only dreamt of having, new cars and things that I had seen that my family couldn't afford. But then also carrying the sense of responsibility for, like I tell people, had I been born 100 feet one direction or the other, I would have been one of the kids collecting wood to try to make $1 to feed my help feed my family. So there was responsibility, and there was also excitement for myself.
Shirley?
It sounds like drive is one of the big characteristics that you have. How young were you when that first started? Do you recall any incidents?
I think once I got a taste of the fact that I could make my own money, it was exciting. But then more importantly, when I really wanted a bike, which was shortly after we moved to the D.C. area, and I saved up about $100 and took, I think, 2-3 buses to Toys R Us, bought a bike, put it together in the parking lot, and rode it home. I remember actually very sweet moms stopped me and told me it wasn't safe to ride my bike on Rockville Pike, but I was super excited because it was freedom. It was working hard for something, earning it. It was mine, and I could do whatever I wanted with it. And it gave me a good taste of what hard work could actually bring.
Mark?
What do your employees expect of you?
I'm not sure what they expect of me. I think I do a good job of communicating that we have a purpose, and I think they expect me to lead them through that purpose. And I think for me...
What do you mean you have a purpose? What are you talking about?
In about 2012, when we recognized how powerful it could be to help farmers through consumer dollars, we shifted our company to a purpose-driven.
What do you mean
focus.
how powerful it could be? What are you talking about?
Ultimately, I started this business to help a family member that was having a hard time making a living because the supply chain was so bloated with people making money in the middle. And all we do is go straight to the farmers and represent farmers and consumers. We want great product for consumers, and we want equity and fairness for farmers. And we've been successful with it. And we now have attracted people through our purpose, which is literally to eliminate systemic poverty in Latin America through responsible trade.
Give me that again.
To eliminate systemic poverty in Latin America through responsible trade of artisanal foods is our purpose.
And how are you doing that?
Basically, by using common sense. We're taking 300-year-old supply chains that are leftover colonialism, and we're going direct to farmers as humans and people that grow our food.
Mm-hmm. Brian?
So, Martin, you talked to us earlier about how when you were 18, you went to Nicaragua, right?
Yes.
And in furtherance of a business opportunity. And I think it relates to what you're just talking about now, about these supply chains. Can you tell us a little bit about that trip?
Ultimately, I had an idea, and I realized that there were a lot of products that people were consuming in the U.S. and paying a lot of money for. I felt that I could be involved in the processing of those products to help.
How young were you?
18.
And what happened with an airplane?
With an airplane? Oh, well, I had discussed it with my dad that I had some ideas of ways to try to make some money, and also...
What'd your dad tell you when you were 18?
Get your butt on a plane and stop talking about it.
And what happened?
I got on a plane.
Uh-huh. And what'd you do?
I went down and...
Where?
I went down to Nicaragua back in the day where you had to have at least 2 to 3 guns on you because it was just... Ortega had just left power and everybody was armed and drove 3 hours to... actually, it was 5 hours back then to the north to a cigar factory that I used to go to with my dad.
And then what?
I worked out a deal to develop a cigar line and just process cigars there. And
where'd the money come from? Where'd the funding come from?
People trusting me and people hearing me out that I wanted to do something and I was willing to work hard for it.
Wait. You're from a foreign country. There's people running around with guns, and they trusted you and they funded you?
Ultimately, I think, I was an entrepreneur before it was cool to be an entrepreneur, and I think I was doing things for the right reasons, and I think people wanted to help a young guy out that was trying to do things that were interesting and hopefully beneficial to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Robert?
So when you first got into business and you connect coming to the United States with having money and that leading to freedom, it seems like you'd probably have a lot more money if you weren't trying to bring your business around to help farmers in Latin America. What makes you...
I've been accused of being a nonprofit, even though we're a very profitable company. I just believe that responsible business should be more than just saying that you have a, diversity or a sustainability, aspect to your business. I think it has to be built into the business, and I purposely run very lean. I'm the only owner of the business, and I run on lean margins and lean profit. But we scale, and with scale, those numbers go up.
So you're really driven by this purpose, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, big time.
What do you mean?
It's powerful when you can actually see that consumers reach out to us every day by the dozens and by the hundreds saying how much they love our product. And then producers and farmers and communities benefit from that. I mean, it's just, you see something that just works and that actually helps people.
So you're the supply chain that's disrupted 300 years worth of middlemen.
In a very, very small way, yeah.
It sounds like in a pretty significant way. So you're going to Latin America, you're finding farmers that have stuff that's in demand here in the United States, and you're the bridge.
Correct.
Uh-huh.
And I think more than anything, we see the farmers as our first customer, which is we provide value for them so that we can provide quality and value for our customers. So we really engage both with a mutual level of consideration and equity and respect.
How high is up? What's the end game here?
It's a pretty big industry. I see
There's a lot of stuff in the United States that we need from Latin America, in other words.
There are. I mean, we're doing over 4.5 million pounds of chia right now a year, which I never would have guessed and didn't even know that much chia was sold in this country.
Wow.
So we've scaled and we continue to scale. Now we're diversifying out. We have a 24,000 square foot facility in Maryland. We're building one in Miami that's a little bit bigger. And I'll be putting in mills in Nicaragua, Peru, Costa Rica within the next 5 years.
Wow. What's the website address of this organization?
It's mayorgaorganics.com. That's MAYORGA organics.com. And it's the same thing for Instagram as well. We have really good pictures of our farmers.
And let me have the spelling of that one more time.
MAYORGA organics.
Organics.com. And what kind of stuff are you guys selling?
Well, we have great coffee right now, all organic, so we only do organic because part of being responsible is taking care of the environment. So we do organic coffee, we do chia, honey, cacao as well. Cool.
We will speak with Martin Mayorga, president of Mayorga Organics here on Executive Leaders Radio. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. Want help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on this show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Jeff Shen, who is the president of Red Team Consulting. Jeff, what is Red Team Consulting? What are you doing?
Red Team is a business that helps other companies grow in the federal market. Primarily that involves providing proposal, capture, and pricing support.
Mm-hmm. How large or how small is the team?
We have 8 full-time internal employees and a little over 100 consultants.
And where are you from originally?
I'm from Parsippany, New Jersey, up north.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have an older brother and an older sister. So I'm the baby of the family.
You're the youngest of 3, huh? Mm-hmm. What was it like growing up in your neighborhood when you were a kid?
We had a great neighborhood. It was lots of kids, kind of prototypical middle class in northern New Jersey, and it was a lot of fun growing up.
A lot of Asian kids like yourself?
There were a good number of Asian kids, but also I had a lot of Jewish friends and Italian friends. It was a pretty diverse area in that sense.
And what kind of sports did you play?
I played a lot of sports. I guess kids my age played a lot of basketball, football, played soccer on occasion.
What was your role playing those sports in the neighborhood?
Well, a lot of times people needed a little bit of a push to come outside and play. So oftentimes myself and my best friend would call the others and say, let's go outside and play. Even when it rained or drizzled, we would encourage others to come out and play.
So you're the organizer, huh? What's that have to do with building this thing called Red Team Consulting?
I think a lot of times there's a direct correlation. A lot of times, people have ideas. People think they want to do things. I kind of gave people that little nudge. I convinced them to say, you know what, maybe you should try something.
Mm-hmm. Robert, your turn.
So even though there were a lot of Asians in your area, did you have feelings when you were growing up of being different and having to do anything different because of that?
I did. I didn't feel like I entirely fit in with any particular group. My background and upbringing felt a little bit different, whereas my Asian friends were playing piano or violin or playing tennis. I was never really in an organized music or sports growing up.
And in some ways, you had to work a little harder, I think, in that regard. Does that play out these days?
It does. I really did my best to fit in with whatever group of friends, whether I was, in elementary school, middle school, especially in high school, trying to find ways to fit in with different groups.
Isn't that what you're doing for your clients now, trying to help them fit in and pick up the contracts?
No, I think there's maybe an indirect correlation there. Certainly we're trying to look for ways for our clients to help, win and grow in federal contracting. But a lot of times it's helping them grow into certain markets that they're not familiar. And so us providing that encouragement.
Yeah, you're like the master connector. You were as a kid and you are nowadays.
Yeah.
Let's see. Shirley.
Who was the bigger influence on you, mom or dad?
It was definitely my mom. Both parents were influential, but my mom has more of a direct correlation as to who I am today.
And where are your parents originally from?
My parents are were both born in China, outside of Shanghai, and they immigrated to Taiwan because of the revolution, both when they were very young kids.
And how does that upbringing sort of affected your life as a child?
Well, they certainly took a lot of risk, I think, as kids growing up and then moving to Taiwan, and then took an even greater risk moving to the States in the early 60s. They didn't know each other back then, but they met and married in New York City. But that has very much a lot to do with who I am as a person.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Well, first of all, taking risk and having to take on those challenges. When I joined the Red Team Consulting as a second employee, I didn't make salary for close to a year. Now, that doesn't seem like such a big deal when compared to my parents moving to 2 different countries in their life. But I think that was partly ingrained in who I was.
Mm-hmm. Mark?
What skill did you have or characteristic did you have that you're most proud of growing up?
I would say there were a couple of things. I'd like to say that a lot of what made me successful as a child or in high school or what have you is I put in a little bit extra effort when compared to some of my peers, and that went a long way. And also I tried really, really hard to fit in, as I was mentioning earlier, to different groups, and that just takes a certain type of a personality approach to work with different groups of people.
Give us an example of how you put in extra effort. What do you mean?
Well, as a kid growing up in high school, I didn't have a very particular group of friends. I was, not to joke, but probably the dumbest Asian kid and probably the most athletic Asian kid when compared to the athletes. And so, growing up, you have to find a way to fit in into those different groups. And I was accepted by everyone just because, I made it about them, not about me in terms of what their interests were.
Mark?
So what other activities you engaged in high school?
2 in particular, I was very heavily involved in speech and debate, as well as my cross-country and track team.
What influence did that have on you? What did you learn from that debate?
So they both had a equal influence. I know from speech and debate, it helped me understand that whatever I did later in life, I knew it would involve some element of public speaking or interacting with people in a public forum. And then from track, I always felt that the effort you put in, you immediately see the results. And being captain of the team is, hopefully influencing others positively.
Is that related to your leadership of your company?
It is very much so. I never really aspired to be president of anything or captain of anything. You kind of get placed in these positions sometimes when you don't start a company. And I got more joy as a captain of my track team seeing others that get better rather than myself, especially as I continue through high school. And I feel the same way today about Red Team Consulting.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It sounds like when you were in your youth, you worked hard, but you weren't necessarily 100% sure where you're going professionally. But also, you seem to have a trend to go a little differently than some of your other family members. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I think there was maybe some old school Asian influence that goes in, and when parents raise their kids, that I think my sister always was destined for a path in financial and accounting. My brother was destined to be a doctor, and I was supposed to be on the path to be a lawyer, but realized I hated taking LSATs and didn't think that was the right path for me, so I went down the business route, and it worked out.
You made your quote earlier, and we were talking in the green room, color to life. What's that all about, color to life?
Well, I think, as you work, and, it's hard to decide the industry you're eventually going to end up in. No one can ever predict when they graduate college what they're really going to do 10 to 20, 30 years from now. But I think as long as you find people that you enjoy working with, the clients that you enjoy working with, that's what adds the color to life versus what it is you actually do.
Oh, what do you mean by that? What are you talking about?
Well, I think for me personally, I get more joy out of working with my coworkers, working with our clients, working with our consultants, seeing them succeed, seeing them improve, seeing them grow, than I do out of any type of personal growth for myself. That for me adds the enjoyment.
Mm-hmm. Bob?
So you said you had to work real hard to fit in, but in some ways winning at proposals is working hard to stand out. How do you make that jump?
That's good. You'll rarely ever see Red Team publicly take credit for any particular win. It's always a behind-the-scenes congratulations, and hope that they continue to use us for growth. But, we want to fit in more than we want to stand out, and that's just how I am as a person as well.
Mm-hmm. What's the best part of your job?
Best part really is getting to work with all of our staff and coworkers. You work hard to build a culture where you get to find people that you enjoy being around. Sometimes being around more than family.
Are you married or single?
I'm married with 3 kids.
What's the similarity between being it says here you're the president of Red Team Consulting and a dad. What's the similarity?
Well, there's a lot of similarity in that you kind of mentor your kids as you mentor your staff, and a lot of times you have your staff present better ideas or better ways to do things, as my kids point out to me every day. And so you try to do your best to listen to all inputs, and then you have the say, but they also have a say in the process.
Do you really see a similarity between the two, between being a dad and being a president?
Absolutely. You have to provide the guidelines, the rules of what you can or cannot do, and then you give them the tools for growth, and keep them on the path for them to continue to grow, and that is what gives me joy, whether personally or professionally.
And you mentioned you were involved with track when you were a kid, and give me what track meant to you, and what that's done to you, what you've learned from track.
I mean, track for me was such a big impact in my life. It's not something I did a lot as a kid. I just kind of fell into it in high school because I realized I was not good enough in literally any other varsity sport. So why not try track or cross country? And for me, as I mentioned earlier, there's a direct correlation between effort and outcome. The harder you work, the more you see the results. And it just provided that first opportunity for me to mentor and see others grow as well as I did in performing track.
You're all about hard work. What's the website address for this organization known as Red Team Consulting?
The website address is redteamconsulting.com, all one word.
Let me have that one more time.
redteamconsulting.com.
We've been speaking with Jeff Shen, president of Red Team Consulting, here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment right after this break. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce John Fraser, who's the president of ASM Research. John, what is ASM Research? What are you guys doing?
ASM Research is an IT systems integrator and a managed services provider primarily focused on the federal marketplace.
How large or how small is this team?
It's about 1,400 employees today.
1,400 employees. Where are you from originally?
I grew up in Clarksburg, West Virginia.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have one brother, one sister, and they're both older than I am.
So you're the youngest of 3 growing up in Clarksburg, West Virginia. And what was going on with you 8 to 14 years old?
Well, at 8 years old, I started off selling pot holders. My mom gave me a loom kit and a bag of looms to go and make pot holders, and I made so many of them that I gave them away to friends and family.
And then you began to sell them. And what gave you the idea to begin selling them, and who did you sell them to, and how did you sell them?
Well, the idea of selling them is I needed money. And or at least I wanted money for the things that I wanted. And I went around the neighborhood and sold them door to door, one by one.
You went around selling them door to door, one by one. And when you were 16, you got a job. What were you doing then?
At that point, I was working in an ice plant. An
ice plant?
Yes.
What'd you do different than the other kids that worked in that ice plant?
The principal job that I had was bagging ice, and as I looked around, there were many other things that needed to be done. So I stepped in and worked in the store, stocked the store. Did you
get paid extra for doing that stuff?
No, it was the same minimum wage.
Why would you? So you're making minimum wage, and you're doing all this extra work. Why would you do that?
It just needed to be done.
What's that have to do with being the? It says you're the president of ASM Research, which is 1,400 people. What's that have to do with that?
I think as we look around, it's kind of a component of providing great service back to our customer base. And when I look back at my ice plant days, it's providing great customer service there as well.
Bob?
So you said you started with the potholder business, selling door to door. It takes a lot of confidence to go and start marketing something to neighbors, especially at 8 years old. What gives you that confidence?
I would say my mother gave me that, helped me build that confidence. She gave me the device to create the pot holders, and she told me, here's a tagline. You need to go out door to door, and don't be afraid to be rejected. And I would say it was 1 in 4 that I made a sale, and 3 times I would be rejected, and I'd just get up and keep going.
How did you deal with that rejection?
I just kind of pushed it off to the side and focused on the positive aspects of what was coming back when I made the sale.
And it wasn't easier to just ask your mom for money?
No, that was not going to happen. That was very clear when I was young. That was just not going to happen.
Shirley?
So tell us a little more about your mom and the influence that she had as a child.
So my mom, when I was growing up, she was a homemaker. She was a substitute teacher. She was a volunteer. And those aspects really influenced my life. She was around a lot when I was growing up. She was involved in 4-H. I was a member of 4-H all the way through my ending days of high school. And just having her there and helping her shape me during those years was very impactful.
How did you feel having her be around quite that much?
I think it was awesome, frankly. It created an extraordinary opportunity for myself to have her part of my life as I was growing up. And I kind of looked around the other kids, like, well, where's your mom's not there with you? And I was just proud that she was there with me.
Mark?
Was there a particular quote or philosophy that you've carried from your childhood?
One of the things I was also involved in high school was Key Club. I was a state officer with Key Club, and it was a service organization as well, just like 4-H. And that element of a service, putting service above yourself and focused on giving back was very impactful.
So ASM has 1,400 employees. Is that part of the credo or philosophy of the culture of the company?
It's not necessarily a spoken credo, but certainly being engaged in community and giving back to areas that are tied to our customer base is very much an impactful element in the company, yes.
Mm-hmm. What areas of philanthropy are you or could you or might you be involved in?
One of the areas is we sponsor some golf tournaments, we sponsor runs, we sponsor things that individuals bring forward within the company that are near and dear to their heart. Probably one of the more impactful things is a Maud golf tournament. General Maud was a general officer in the Pentagon during 9/11, and that was in our client space. So that actually impacted us to really invoke and getting in more into the giving back to the community.
Ryan?
Speaking of the Pentagon, you told us an interesting story about how you were 17, you elected to convince your parents to allow you to enlist in the Army. What brought you to that decision? You're busy doing a lot of different jobs, working in an ice house, etc. What brought you to that decision at such a young age, and what did you learn from it?
So I mentioned I grew up in Clarksburg, West Virginia. I really felt in order to create an opportunity for myself that I needed to move out of that area. And the Army was certainly a way to facilitate that. I knew at a young age I actually wanted to join the Army. Probably 15, 16 years old, and my parents signed on the dotted line for me at 17 so I could enter into the Army. And actually the best thing I ever did, created an opportunity for me to meet up with ASM as well as meeting my bride as well while I was in the military.
And you met up with ASM because you were involved in technology at some level, right? Many years ago.
Correct, yes. In 1983, ASM was fielding an IT solution there at Fort Dix where I was stationed. I was one of the principal users of that system, and upon the completion of my military career, they offered a job to me.
Kathleen, you've been working with John Fraser for how long now?
Just about 4 years.
And what's your role in the organization?
I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications.
Director of Marketing and Communication. What's John's reputation in the organization, within the organization?
I think people view him as a very honest leader who leads by example. He's also got very much a growth mindset, both for the company. We move into many different areas, and also for individuals within the company.
It's interesting that the first thing you mentioned was that he was known as an honest leader. Is that what what you said?
Yes, he's very transparent.
That's interesting. You don't normally hear that in the newspapers or in the media about somebody being honest. Why is that so important?
I think he ties everything back to our corporate core values. He was the 13th employee of ASM, and I think he still likes people to feel. I mean, he leads that way. He knows what everybody does in the company. He's very much aware of what's going on, and he wants everybody else to know the same.
Does John go around and shake hands, or does he go sit in his office all the time?
He's definitely a go-around shaking hands kind of leader.
Why would he do that kind of stuff?
I think it's important to him to know what's going on and to have people know him.
John, why do you do that? Why don't you go sit in your fancy-dancy office?
When I first came to ASM, the owner of the company would come around and deliver paychecks by hand and make a connection with each one of the employees and talk to them about what do you do, Why is it important, and why is it important for our customers? And I think making sure that we have that established connection between our employees, what the work that we're doing, and the value that it brings to our customers is super important to who we are as an organization.
Where'd you get that? What is that characteristic, and where'd you get that from?
I think I go right back to my mother and instilling of what's important in life, and making sure that you're giving back in life is extremely important to me and to our company, and just the values that I grew up with.
Robert?
John, you said in the ice house the extra work had to be done. Why you?
There wasn't anybody else there to do it, and it needed to be done. And, rather than sitting around and doing nothing and getting paid for doing nothing, I think that you should be doing something for what it is that you're getting paid for.
A lot of people would make the opposite conclusion, though.
Yes, that's true, but that's not who I am.
Was that Mom again?
I would say so, yes.
What'd you get from Dad that you bring to work every day?
My dad's a very hard worker. I mean, he would work from the time, he would go to work before I woke up in the morning, and he would not come back until after dinner. So he worked a very long day, and I think a very solid work ethic.
What'd your dad do for a living?
He was a managing partner of an accounting firm at the end of his career.
He was the managing partner of an accounting firm. Did you get an allowance when you were a kid?
No allowance.
Why?
It was never even a consideration. This money was just not something that was given away for doing nothing. You had to do things.
What did you learn from not having an allowance?
If you wanted to have money to do something, you needed to go out and earn it, and that's how you were going to get your funds.
So, must have been difficult, but looking back on it, if you could have given yourself an allowance then, would you have? Or would you have left it the way it was?
I think I would have left it the way it was.
Why?
Because I'm pretty proud of the ethics that helped create. That there is nothing free. There's no free lunch. You need to go out and you need to work, and you need to get to earn what you deserve to earn for the work and value that you're putting back into it.
Married or single?
I am married.
You have any kids?
I have one son and one daughter, both adults.
Similarity between being a president and being a dad?
That's a tough question. I would say I rely on my wife to provide the ground rules, and that's probably one of the best decisions I ever made.
What's the website address of this organization known as ASM Research?
ASMR.com.
Let me have that one more time, please.
ASMR.com.
We've been speaking with John Fraser, president of ASM Research here on Executive Leaders Radio. Don't forget to visit our website. It's executiveleadersradio.com. Learn more about our executive leaders. We'll be back in a moment, right after this break. Want to help building your business with help from this show's CEOs? Our CEOs can help you uncover more opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that. They've succeeded in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars, and some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. The same CEOs you've heard on the show for 10 years may be willing to help you build your business, uncover new opportunities, grow your sales, connect you, help you raise money, all the big issues, because our CEOs have been there and done that, succeeding in creating millions of jobs and earning millions of dollars. And some are available to advise you. Now, email mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. That's mentors@executiveleadersradio.com. We're back. You're listening to Executive Leaders Radio. This is your host, Herb Cohen. We'd like to introduce Tom Stauber and Mike Chavira, managing partners and co-founders of Axiologic Solutions. What is Axiologic Solutions? What are you guys doing?
So Axiologic Solutions, we're a systems engineering services provider to the federal government, largely supporting intelligence and defense customers.
How large or how small is the organization?
We have about 110 folks today, additional 100 or so subcontractors.
And you guys started this, you guys co-founded this business?
Yes.
Mike, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Powell, Wyoming.
And how many brothers and sisters?
I grew up with 3 sisters.
And you're the oldest of 3, right?
I'm the oldest of 4, yes.
Oldest of 4, excuse me. And tell us a little bit about what your mother did. And what your mother did to you?
My mother, when I was very young, pushed myself at school. Said, if I wanted to get out of the town, I wanted to get out of that work of what we're doing there. I needed to go to school, and so at a very young age, she got me a library card and got me a bunch of books. And for a summer, I had to read to her and tell her what I was reading, and as well as math books as well.
So what happened to your grades and your status in the class that summer?
So I went from the back of the class to the front of the class. I went in I started school not speaking only speaking Spanish. Ended up learning English while I was in school.
Where's your mom from?
My mom's also from Mexico.
Yeah, she's first generation Mexican, isn't she?
Yes.
What did her parents do?
Her parents, they were initially migrant workers. Ended up going.
Yeah, they were following the food
following
chain.
The crops. Yeah, they that's how they ended up in Wyoming.
Following the crops,
and then they ended up cleaning banks and doing odd jobs around Powell.
Whatever they could do to make a living. Tom, how about yourself? Where are you from?
From northern Westchester County, New York, a town called Cortland Manor.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have one younger brother.
And what was going on with you about the age 13?
13. That's when I was getting into high school. I basically was transitioning. For me, 13 was tough because I made the decision to go to a school that was further away from home, had to connect to a couple of public buses, had like basically an hour and a half long commute to get there.
Why would you
went against kind of the grain with the rest of...
Why would you make it difficult on yourself?
Yeah, the rest of my classmates, they were going to schools that were more local. I looked at those and didn't see the same level of opportunity in terms of where kind of some of the public schools were going, as well as some of the local private schools where the kids didn't necessarily develop.
So you're
the same way as
13 and you're looking. You're not trying to take the easy route out. You're making it. You want the opportunity. You're willing to work hard for it. At the age of 13, you decided what school you wanted to go to. Bob?
That's interesting, Tom, that with the idea of going against the grain, did that apply when you got into the military and wound up doing explosive ordnance disposal intelligence in Afghanistan?
I mean, as I kind of said earlier before we got into this, is you don't really get to decide whether you go against the grain, but it's good to embrace, right? So what the military does is every 2 to 3 years, you're going to get into something that maybe you don't have experience in, so that kind of entices me, and that's something to live for because you get into it, and it's always something new and exciting.
Mike, I wanted to ask, your mother pushed you in your partnership with Tom. Do you push him, or does he push you too?
I think we push each other. I see, Tom is always, he's asked me things that I may not have thought of, and likewise, I think I asked Tom different things about, hey, have you thought about this? And so we approach problems from two different directions, and I think it's basically helped develop our culture overall.
Shirley?
Tell me a little bit about the roles you each play within your firm.
Well, initially, when we got started, we were both billing in the company. It was just the two of us. As we've grown, now we're managing people right now. I think right now we're more focused on the culture of the company. We make sure that's developing properly, as well as the overall strategy of where the company's going to go from here.
And what are the differences that you bring to the table?
Differences, I think it's, like I said, our approach to how we are, the different challenges we have at work. We may look at it from a financial perspective, but then we have to look at it from the human aspect of it as well.
Mark?
Mike and Tom, what kind of books or movies did you guys enjoy as kids?
So, I have a lot of books and a lot of films, and obviously a lot of things that I got into as a child. I don't know that I necessarily identify with a specific book or theme. Obviously, science fiction, fantasy was probably the biggest.
Right, and for me, I grew up, working on a farm, working on a ranch, so I'd spend hours by myself out in the farm by myself. And what I would do is I would always have books with me, and a lot of them were fantasy, a lot of J.R. Tolkien, a lot of different Shannara books. Game of Thrones was a big one that I've read now several times.
How does that relate to the kind of culture or the business that you're in right now?
I think, Tom alluded to it earlier. It's I think it's understanding that, there's an underdog that kind of gets through challenges. They may not have all the, different things that, some of the characters in those books have.
Brian?
Gentlemen, if we can talk a little bit about how when you guys first started making money as kids, effectively. Maybe Mike want to go first, perhaps?
Sure.
Talk a little bit about it.
So I alluded to earlier, as I started making money at about 10 years old. I was mowing lawns. My dad also took me out on the farm. I was driving a truck. He taught me how to drive a truck by the time I was 12. And once I got that figured out, he's like, "Great, now you can start irrigating." And so I was at a very early age. I learned the importance of a work ethic.
And you learned also that you wanted to pursue an education and then
I did.
And move on from that.
I didn't realize how difficult that type of work is. It's long hours, and my mom also pushed us, like, if you don't want to do it, you need to get an education.
And Tom?
And for me, I think maybe not the first time making money, but certainly one of the bigger influences was about 13, 14 years of age. I remember in the early stages of high school, we got into junior achievement, where we actually stood up and ran our own business. We had like the full suite of C-level folks, and just kind of running all of the aspects and determine how all of that does and doesn't work.
And that was something which interested you.
It was because it was fun to be able to be a 13 or 14-year-old and dive into data and figure out where you can find the arbitrage, make things work, look at margins, how businesses can be successful.
And you guys both have an engineering background, right? And
Yes.
you both decided at one point that the military service would be a good place right after school or during school, really,
Yes.
to sort of build up on your opportunities.
Yeah. So obviously, Mike was a Navy guy. I was an Army guy. We can decide which one's better, but we know
still out there. Right?
It's not out there. It's said, at least for the past 3 years. But looking at that, we went to the University of Virginia together. We ran through a systems engineering program together. The one thing that we have like-minded is we're fairly analytical in the way that we look at data and things, and understand that there is kind of a tactile thing that's there that's not abstract, that you can look at, that helps you understand business decisions and how things run.
Good.
So you guys have been working together for how many years now?
For 10 years this April.
And are you equal partners?
No, Tom is the majority owner. He's a service-able vet, and so doing the operating agreements and following all the rules, he has to have.
Do you guys enjoy working with each other?
Most days.
Do you guys trust each other?
I do. I trust Tom implicitly.
We do. I'm not afraid to turn my back to Mike.
So it's not. It's interesting in business. You don't usually hear that. You hear about people suing each other and blood and guts, and people cheating each other. That's not the way you guys are, though.
No, I mean, we were friends first. I learned to work with Tom at UVA. I mean, we went through a very grueling program, but it was very rewarding. I worked in a.
Mike, didn't you tell me one of your sisters works with you or something like that?
She does. She
does.
What
did she think of Tom?
I think she likes working for him a lot more than she likes working for me.
Wait, give me that again.
She likes working for him a lot more than me.
So your family likes him?
Yes.
What do they like about him?
What do they like about him? I think he's pretty honest when it comes to like what she's doing and things like that. I think I always was the protector growing up. Always looked out for my sisters, but I also was a good practical joker. So they were my first victims. So my sisters are always, I think she's a little nervous that something might happen.
Maybe she feels safer with Tom than she did with you. Yeah. So you guys really enjoy working together.
We do. It is a fun environment.
What do you mean it's a fun environment? You usually don't hear that about business.
It's something that I've been in positions where I wake up in the mornings, I'm not excited to go to work. For the last 10 years, I haven't had that experience.
What do you mean?
I mean, I enjoy being the guy in charge. I enjoy making these decisions. Everybody that we've hired fits into our culture. It's a good bunch of people that we work with.
What's the website address for this organization known as Axiologic Solutions?
AxiologicSolutions.com.
Spell that, please.
AXIOLOGICSOLUTIONS.
Sounds like your mother did a good job at the library with you that summer. We've been speaking with Tom Stauber and Mike Chavira, managing partners and co-founders of Axiologic Solutions here on Executive Leaders Radio. Mark, can you give us a rundown on who we've had on the air today, please?
Sure, Herb. Today we had Martin Mayorga, president of Mayorga Organics, Jeff Shen, president of Red Team Consulting, John Fraser, President of ASM Research, and Mike Chavira and Tom Stauber of Axiologic Solutions.
Excellent. I'd like to thank my co-hosts, including Joe Applebaum, Potomac Companies, Brian Chandler, Pretoria Law, Mark Haas, Association for Enterprise Growth, Bob Sprague, Yes and Shirley Mowry, Hertzbach and Company for giving me hand structuring the questions, hopefully providing our listening audience an educational and entertaining show. I'd like to thank our listening audience for listening, otherwise we wouldn't have a radio show. Don't forget to visit our website, executiveleadersradio.com, to learn more about our executive leaders. Thank you for joining us today, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.